The wanted poster nailed to the livery stable bore her father's face, and Faye Brennan tore it down before anyone in Durango, Colorado could see her staring at it too long. She crumpled the paper in her fist, feeling the rough texture bite into her palm as her heart hammered against her ribs. The autumn of 1883 had brought her to this dusty mountain town with nothing but a worn carpetbag, $23 she had earned honestly, and a desperate need to become someone other than Thomas Brennan's daughter. The wanted poster promised $500 for information leading to the capture of the notorious cattle rustler, who had terrorized ranchers from Texas to Montana for the better part of a decade. Faye stuffed the crumpled paper deep into her skirt pocket and turned away from the stable, her boots kicking up small clouds of dirt as she made her way down the main street. Durango sprawled at the base of the San Juan Mountains, a railroad town that had exploded into existence just 2 years prior, when the Denver and Rio Grande Railway pushed through. The streets bustled with miners, ranchers, merchants, and drifters, all drawn by the promise of silver in the mountains and opportunity in the valleys. It was exactly the kind of place where a young woman could disappear into honest work and leave her past buried in unmarked territory. Faye had been in town for 3 days, sleeping in a boarding house that smelled of lye soap and old coffee, stretching her money as far as it would go while she searched for employment. She had tried the hotel first, hoping for work as a chambermaid, but the manager had taken one look at her calloused hands and sun-weathered face and suggested she try the saloons instead. The implication had burned, but Faye had swallowed her pride and moved on. She was not afraid of hard work. She had spent her entire life working hard, just not at anything she could put on a letter of reference. The general store needed no one. The seamstress had laughed outright when Faye admitted she could barely manage a straight stitch. The restaurant kitchen was full. By the 4th day, Faye's money had dwindled to $18, and the weight of failure pressed against her chest like a stone. She was walking past the land office, wondering if she should try the laundries on the east side of town, when she heard the commotion coming from the stockyard at the edge of the commercial district. Curious, she followed the sound of shouting and the distressed lowing of cattle until she found herself at the fence of a large pen where at least 30 head of cattle milled about in obvious agitation. A tall man stood in the center of the chaos, trying to separate a cow from her calf, while 2 other ranch hands attempted to drive the rest of the herd into a sorting chute. It was not going well. The cow charged one of the men, who scrambled up the fence rails with a yelp. The other man waved his hat and hollered, which only seemed to make the animals more frantic. "Get the gate," the tall man shouted, his voice carrying clear authority even over the noise. He moved with practiced ease between the agitated animals, never flustered, his hands calm as he redirected the charging cow with nothing but his body position and a low, steady stream of words Faye could not quite hear. She watched, fascinated, as he gradually brought order to the chaos. He did not yell, he did not wave or jump. He simply moved through the cattle like water flowing around stones, and slowly, impossibly, they began to settle. The cow stopped charging. The calf found its mother. The rest of the herd began to calm. Faye had grown up around stolen cattle and the rough men who stole them. She had seen animals beaten, terrorized, and driven half to death. She had never seen anyone work with livestock the way this man did, with patience and respect, as if he understood something essential about their nature that other men missed. When the last animal had been sorted into the correct pen, the tall man climbed out of the stockyard and accepted a dipper of water from one of the other hands. He was perhaps 26 or 27, Faye guessed, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water after rain. Dust covered his clothes and sweat dampened his shirt, but he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. "You handle cattle well," Faye said before she could think better of it. The man turned, surprised to find a woman standing by the fence. His companions had already wandered off toward the water trough. Up close, Faye could see the fine lines around his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the way his shoulders filled out his shirt with solid muscle earned from years of physical labor. "Thank you, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat politely. His voice was deeper than she had expected, with a faint Texas drawl softening the edges of his words. "Though I cannot take all the credit, cattle are not complicated creatures if you know how to listen." "Most men do not bother listening," Faye said. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of interest or perhaps approval. "No, they do not. Most men think livestock are too stupid to bother understanding, but that says more about the men than the animals." Faye found herself smiling, a real smile that felt strange on her face after so many days of worry. "I am inclined to agree." He studied her for a moment, his gaze direct but not impolite. Faye resisted the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. She knew what she looked like. A woman too tall and too thin, with sun-darkened skin and hands that bore the evidence of work no lady should know. Her dress was clean but old, carefully mended in places where the fabric had worn through. Her hair, dark brown and stubbornly straight, was pulled back in a simple bun that was already coming loose after her morning of walking. "Owen Tate," he said, extending his hand. Faye hesitated only a moment before taking it. His palm was rough with calluses that matched her own, and his grip was firm without being presumptuous. "Faye Brennan. You are new to Durango, Miss Brennan." "I arrived this week," she admitted. "I am looking for work." Owen's eyebrows rose slightly. "What kind of work?" "Honest work," Faye said, meeting his eyes steadily. "Any kind of honest work. I can cook, clean, tend livestock, mend fence, whatever needs doing. I am not afraid of long hours or hard labor." "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Rope?" "Well enough." "Brand?" Faye's stomach tightened. "I know how it is done." Owen was quiet for a moment, his gray-green eyes searching her face for something she could not name. Then he said, "I am foreman at the Double T Ranch, about 8 miles north of town. We run about 1,500 head, plus horses. The owner is looking to hire another hand for the winter. The work is hard. The pay is $30 a month plus room and board, and you will be expected to pull your weight same as any man." Faye's heart began to race. "You would hire a woman?" "I would hire someone who can do the work," Owen said simply. "Most women cannot or will not, but you do not strike me as most women." He held out his hand again, palm up this time. "Let me see your hands, Miss Brennan." Slowly, Faye pulled off her worn gloves and placed her hands in his. Owen turned them over, studying the calluses on her palms, the rope burns on her fingers, the small scars that told the story of years spent doing exactly the kind of work he was offering. His touch was gentle, almost clinical, but Faye felt heat rise to her cheeks nonetheless. "These are working hands," Owen said quietly. "Hands that know cattle and horses and hard country. I do not care what your name is or where you came from, Miss Brennan. I care whether you can do the job." Faye felt something crack open inside her chest, some tight knot of fear and shame she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. This man was offering her exactly what she had been searching for, a chance to be judged by what she could do rather than who her father was. "I can do the job," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke her. Owen released her hands and nodded once, decisive. "Then you are hired. Can you start tomorrow?" I can start right now." A slow smile spread across Owen's face, transforming his serious expression into something warmer. "Tomorrow will do. Be at the stockyard at first light with whatever belongings you have. I will bring a wagon into town for supplies and you can ride out with me. Fair enough." "Fair enough," Faye agreed. They shook hands again, sealing the bargain, and Faye felt the weight of desperation lift from her shoulders for the first time since she had fled her father's camp 6 weeks ago. She had a job. She had a place to go. She had a chance. That night, Faye lay in her narrow boarding house bed and allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to live honestly, to earn wages through labor rather than theft, to introduce herself without fear that someone might recognize her surname. Sleep came easier than it had in months. She was waiting at the stockyard when Owen arrived the next morning, driving a sturdy wagon pulled by a team of matched bays. The sun had barely cleared the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that made the peaks look like they were on fire. Faye had packed her few belongings: 2 changes of clothes, a hairbrush, a book of poetry her mother had given her years ago, and the small amount of money she had left into her carpet bag, and settled her only hat on her head. "Good morning, Miss Brennan," Owen said as he pulled the wagon to a stop. "You are punctual. I appreciate that." "Good morning, Mr. Tate," Faye replied, handing her bag up to him. He stowed it in the back among sacks of flour and beans, then offered his hand to help her onto the bench seat. His grip was strong and steady, and Faye found herself acutely aware of the breadth of his shoulders as she settled beside him. The ride north took them out of Durango and into the high country where pine forests climbed the mountainsides, and the air grew thin and sweet. Owen drove with the same calm competence he brought to everything else, keeping the horses to a steady pace while he pointed out landmarks and explained the lay of the land. "The Double T has been in the Tate family for 12 years, he said as they followed a rutted road through a valley carpeted with autumn grass. "My uncle started it when he came west after the war. He built it from nothing into one of the better ranches in the territory, but his health is failing now. He brought me out from Texas 3 years ago to help him run it." "Is it just the 2 of you?" Faye asked. "There are 4 other hands plus a cook, though one of the men is talking about moving on after Roundup. My uncle mostly stays in the house these days. His lungs are not what they were." Owen glanced at her, his expression serious. "I will be honest with you, Miss Brennan. Some of the men may have opinions about a woman working alongside them. I will not tolerate disrespect or interference with your work, but there may be grumbling." "I can handle grumbling," Faye said. "I believe you can," Owen said, and there was something in his tone that made Faye's chest tighten pleasantly. They reached the Double T just before noon. The ranch sprawled across a wide valley where a creek ran silver and cold between willow-lined banks. The main house was a solid structure of logs and river stone with a wide porch and glass windows that spoke of prosperity. The barn, corrals, and outbuildings were well maintained, the fences straight and strong. Cattle dotted the hillsides in the distance, fat and healthy. It was, Faye thought with a pang of something like grief, everything her father's scattered camps had never been. This was what happened when people built something instead of stealing it. Owen introduced her to the other hands. Jim, a grizzled man in his 50s who looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. Pete and Carlos, younger men who seemed more curious than hostile. And Bobby, barely 19, who blushed scarlet when Faye said hello. The cook, a Chinese man named Wu who had worked for the Tates since the beginning, merely nodded and returned to his kitchen without comment. "You will bunk in the loft above the tack room," Owen said, leading Faye to a small but clean space that smelled of leather and hay. It is not much, but it is private and warm. Wu will have meals ready at dawn, noon, and dusk. If you miss them, you go hungry." "Understood," Faye said, setting her bag on the narrow cot. "Rest today, get your bearings. Tomorrow you will start work with the morning chores." Owen paused in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "Miss Brennan, I meant what I said yesterday. I do not care about your past, but if trouble follows you here, I need to know about it." Faye's blood ran cold. "What makes you think trouble might follow me?" "You have the look of someone running from something," Owen said quietly. "I have seen it before. I am not judging, but this ranch is my responsibility, and everyone on it is under my protection. I need to know if there is something I should be watching for." For a long moment, Faye considered lying. It would be easy. Owen had no reason to connect her to Thomas Brennan, no reason to suspect that the new hand he had just hired was the daughter of a wanted criminal. But he had been honest with her, had judged her by her hands rather than her name, and she found she could not repay that with deception. "My father is not a good man," she said carefully. "I left him because I wanted no part of his life. He does not know where I am, and I intend to keep it that way. But if he ever found out, yes, there might be trouble." Owen studied her face, his expression unreadable. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where he would try to take me back," Faye said. "I will not go. I would die first." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Then Owen nodded slowly. "All right. You are entitled to your privacy, and I will not press for details. But know this. You are part of this ranch now, and I do not abandon my people. If your father or anyone else comes looking to cause you harm, they will have to go through me first." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Faye's throat tighten. "Thank you," she managed. "No thanks necessary," Owen said. "Get some rest, Miss Brennan. Tomorrow the real work begins." Faye spent the afternoon organizing her few possessions and familiarizing herself with the ranch layout. She found the well, the privy, the chicken coop, and the vegetable garden Wu maintained with surprising success given the altitude. She studied the horses in the corral, assessing their temperaments, and walked the fence line closest to the buildings, checking for weak spots out of habit. Dinner was a substantial affair of beef stew, fresh bread, and dried apple pie that Wu served in the bunkhouse dining room. The men ate with the single-minded focus of people who burned enormous amounts of energy every day. Conversation was minimal, though Faye caught Jim watching her with narrowed eyes several times. She was helping Wu clear the plates when Jim finally spoke up. "So what is a woman doing taking on ranch work anyway? Can you not find a husband to keep you?" The room went quiet. Faye straightened, meeting Jim's gaze evenly. "I am doing ranch work because I am good at it, and because Mr. Tate hired me to do it. My marital status is none of your concern." "It is my concern if you cannot pull your weight and the rest of us have to pick up the slack," Jim said. "Then I suggest you wait and see if that happens before you complain about it," Faye replied coolly. Owen, who had been silent up to this point, set down his coffee cup with enough force to make it clatter against the saucer. "That is enough, Jim. Miss Brennan is here on my authority, and she will be treated with the same respect as any other hand. If you have a problem with that, you are welcome to draw your wages and move on. Are we clear?" Jim's jaw worked, but he nodded. "Clear." "Good," Owen said. "Now, unless anyone has something productive to contribute, I suggest we all get some sleep. Morning comes early." The men dispersed, and Faye carried the last of the dishes to Wu's kitchen before making her way to the loft. She could hear the low murmur of voices from the bunkhouse, probably Jim continuing to grumble, but she was too exhausted to care. She changed into her nightdress, said a prayer of gratitude to a God she was not entirely sure was listening, and fell asleep to the sound of wind in the pines. Dawn came cold and clear, turning the frost on the grass into diamonds. Faye woke to the sound of Owen's voice calling the men to breakfast, and dressed quickly in the warmest clothes she had. Her fingers were stiff with cold as she braided her hair and jammed her hat on her head. Breakfast was oatmeal with molasses and bacon, accompanied by coffee strong enough to strip paint. Faye ate quickly, aware of the men watching her, judging whether she would prove to be an asset or a liability. "Miss Brennan, you will be working with me today," Owen said as they finished eating. "We need to move about 100 head from the upper pasture down closer to the ranch before the weather turns. Pete and Carlos will help. Jim and Bobby, you are on fence repair in the south section." The morning was spent in the saddle on a compact bay mare named Rosie, who had a sensible disposition and a surprisingly smooth gait. Faye fell into the rhythm of the work easily, her body remembering skills she had learned as a child. She and Pete rode the ridgeline while Owen and Carlos worked the valley, gradually pushing the cattle toward the lower pasture. It was hard work, but good work, and Faye found herself relaxing into it. The sun climbed higher, burning off the frost and warming the air. The cattle moved steadily, not spooked, not stressed. By midday they had the herd where Owen wanted them, and they stopped to eat the lunches Wu had packed. Thick sandwiches of cold beef and sharp cheese, apples from someone's orchard, and water from their canteens. "You ride well," Owen observed, sitting on a rock outcropping that overlooked the valley. "Better than well, actually. You have spent significant time in the saddle." "I have," Faye admitted. "My father moved around frequently. I learned young." "What did he do, your father?" Faye's chest tightened. "He was in the cattle business." It was not precisely a lie. Owen nodded, accepting the explanation, though Faye suspected he heard the evasion in her words. To her relief, he did not press. They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Faye's legs ached and her back was sore, but it was the good soreness of muscles well used, not the sick exhaustion of fear and flight that had plagued her for weeks. The days fell into a pattern. Faye rose before dawn, worked until dusk, ate Wu's excellent cooking, and fell into bed too tired to dream. She mended fence, moved cattle, doctored a horse with colic, helped dig a new drainage ditch, and proved herself capable with every task Owen set before her. Jim's skepticism gradually gave way to grudging acceptance. Pete and Carlos treated her like any other hand. Bobby continued to blush whenever she spoke to him, but he was helpful and kind. And Owen watched her with those creek water eyes and judged her by her hands, just as he had promised. 3 weeks into her employment, Faye was in the barn repairing a bridle when Owen found her. The late afternoon light slanted through the open doors, turning the dust motes into gold. Owen leaned against a support post, his arms crossed, and studied her work. "You are good with leather," he observed. "My mother taught me," Faye said, focusing on the stitching. "She said a person who could not repair their own tack would always be dependent on someone else, and dependence was dangerous." "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Faye said softly. "She died when I was 14. I am sorry." Faye tied off the thread and tested the repair, tugging hard to make sure it would hold. "It was a long time ago." "Time does not always diminish loss," Owen said. Something in his tone made Faye look up. Owen's expression was distant, his gaze focused on something far beyond the barn walls. "You lost someone too," she said. "It was not a question." "My parents and younger sister," Owen said quietly. "Cholera when I was 21. I was away at the time, helping drive cattle up from South Texas. By the time I got the message and made it home, they were already buried." "I am sorry," Faye said, echoing his words. "I tell myself they did not suffer long, that it was God's will. All the things people say to make sense of senseless things. But the truth is I was not there when they needed me, and I have to live with that. Faye set down the bridle and crossed the space between them, moved by an impulse she did not fully understand. You cannot blame yourself for being where you were supposed to be, doing what you were supposed to do. Owen's eyes refocused on her face, and Faye was startled by the intensity of his gaze. Can you not? Then why do you blame yourself for whatever it is you are running from? The words hit like a physical blow. Faye stepped back, her defenses slamming into place. That is different, is it? Yes, Faye said, but her voice lacked conviction. Owen pushed away from the post and moved closer, not crowding her but closing the distance until she could see the flecks of darker green in his eyes. I have been watching you, Faye. I have seen how you work yourself to exhaustion every day, how you volunteer for the hardest tasks, how you push yourself harder than any of the other hands. You are trying to prove something, and I do not think it is to me or Jim or anyone else on this ranch. I think you are trying to prove it to yourself. I am trying to earn my place, Faye said tightly. You earned your place the first day, Owen said. What you are doing now is punishing yourself. Faye turned away, unable to bear the understanding in his eyes. You do not know what you are talking about. Maybe not, Owen conceded. But I know what guilt looks like because I see it in my own mirror every morning, and I know that working yourself into the ground will not wash it away, no matter how hard you try. Then what does? Faye asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I am still trying to figure that out, Owen admitted. But I think it has something to do with forgiveness, and I think it starts with forgiving yourself. Faye closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. I do not know if I can. Then maybe start smaller, Owen said gently. Start by believing that you deserve a second chance. When Faye opened her eyes, Owen was watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand, lacing her calloused fingers through his. Owen's breath caught, but he did not pull away. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently, an anchor in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. They stood like that for a long moment, hands clasped in the golden light, two damaged people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. Then Wu rang the dinner bell and the spell was broken. Owen released her hands slowly, reluctantly. We should go eat before the others come looking. Faye nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked to the bunkhouse side by side, careful not to touch but acutely aware of the changed dynamic between them. Over the following weeks, something shifted. Owen began finding reasons to work alongside Faye, teaching her the finer points of cattle management, sharing stories about the ranch and his uncle, and the dream of building something that would last. Faye, in turn, found herself opening up in small ways, telling him about her mother's kindness, her own love of the mountains, the books she had read and the places she hoped to see someday. They did not speak again about guilt or forgiveness or second chances, but the understanding hung between them like a promise. The first snow came in late October, dusting the peaks and sending the cattle down to the lower pastures. Owen drove into Durango for winter supplies, and Faye went with him, ostensibly to help load the wagon but really because she found she missed his company during the hours they were apart. They were coming out of the general store, arms loaded with packages, when Faye saw him. He was older than she remembered, his face more weathered, his hair grayer, but there was no mistaking Thomas Brennan. He stood across the street near the saloon, talking to two men Faye recognized from his gang. Her father gestured animatedly, and one of the men laughed at something he said. Faye's vision tunneled. The packages slipped from her nerveless fingers and hit the boardwalk with a thud. Owen was beside her instantly, his hand on her elbow. Faye, What is wrong? She could not answer, could not breathe. Her father was here in Durango, less than 50 yards away. If he turned his head, if he looked in her direction, he would see her. Owen followed her gaze, his body going tense. Is that him? Your father? Faye managed a jerky nod. Come on, Owen said, his voice low and urgent. He guided her quickly back into the store, positioning them behind a display of canned goods where they could see the street but were partially hidden. Which one is he? The one in the middle, Faye whispered. The tall one with the gray beard. Owen studied Thomas Brennan with narrowed eyes. I have seen wanted posters for him. Thomas Brennan, cattle rustler, $500 reward. Faye's stomach turned to ice. You knew. I suspected when you gave me your surname, Owen admitted. There are not many Brennans in this territory, and most people know about Thomas Brennan. But I told you, I do not care about your father's crimes. They are not your crimes. Some people would not see it that way, Faye said bitterly. Then some people are fools, Owen said firmly. He watched as Thomas Brennan and his companions moved down the street toward the livery stable. Does he know you are in Durango? No, I have not seen him or sent word since I left. He cannot know I am here. Then we will make sure he does not find out, Owen said. He waited until the three men disappeared into the livery before ushering Faye out of the store. They loaded the wagon quickly, working in tense silence, and Owen drove them out of town at a pace just short of suspicious. They were a mile outside Durango when Faye finally spoke. Thank you for not turning me in. Owen's hands tightened on the reins. The thought never crossed my mind. $500 is a lot of money. I do not need blood money, Owen said sharply, and I would never betray someone who trusted me, regardless of the price. Faye felt something warm unfold in her chest. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. You told me enough, Owen said. You said your father was not a good man and that you wanted no part of his life. That was all I needed to know. He glanced at her, his expression softening. Are you all right? I do not know, Faye admitted. Seeing him, I felt like a child again, small and powerless and afraid. I hate that he can still make me feel that way. Fear is not weakness, Faye. It is your mind telling you to be careful, and in this case, your mind is right. Thomas Brennan is dangerous, and if he is in the area, we need to take precautions. What kind of precautions? For starters, you stay at the ranch. No more trips into town until he moves on, which he will. Men like that never stay in one place long. Owen's jaw was set in a determined line. And if he comes to the Double T for any reason, you let me handle it. Owen, I cannot ask you to put yourself at risk for me. You are not asking. I am telling you how this is going to be, Owen said, his tone brooking no argument. You are under my protection, and I will not have your father or anyone else threaten that. They drove the rest of the way in silence, but when they reached the ranch and began unloading the supplies, Owen's hand brushed against Faye's and lingered. It was a small gesture, easily dismissed as accidental, but Faye knew better. Owen was telling her without words that he was there, that she was not alone, that he would stand between her and her past if necessary. That night, Faye lay awake in her loft, listening to the wind rattle the shutters and trying to calm the fear that clawed at her throat. Her father was in Durango. He might be planning another theft, or he might be laying low after a job, or he might be looking for new recruits. It did not matter. What mattered was that he was close, too close, and if he discovered she was at the Double T, he would come for her. Thomas Brennan did not believe in letting go of what he considered his. Faye had learned that lesson when she had tried to leave at 16, and her father had tracked her for 3 days before dragging her back to camp. She still had the scar on her shoulder where he had grabbed her hard enough to bruise bone, but she had been 16 then, and alone. Now she was 22, and she had Owen. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. She did not want to bring trouble to the Double T, did not want to put Owen or the other hands at risk, but neither could she run again. She was tired of running, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of being defined by her father's choices. Owen had judged her by her hands, not her name. He had seen the person she was trying to become rather than the person she had been forced to be. And somewhere in the past weeks, without quite meaning to, Faye had fallen in love with him. The realization hit her like a runaway horse. She loved Owen Tate. She loved his quiet strength, his steady hands, his refusal to judge her for circumstances beyond her control. She loved the way he talked to the cattle, the way he protected his people, the way he made her feel like she was worth protecting. And she was terrified that loving him would destroy everything. The next morning, Owen informed the other hands that there was a known criminal operating in the area and that everyone should be extra vigilant. He did not mention Thomas Brennan by name or explain his connection to Faye, but Jim was shrewd enough to put the pieces together. "This have something to do with our new hand?" he asked, jerking his chin toward Faye. "It has to do with keeping this ranch and everyone on it safe," Owen said firmly. "That is all you need to know." Jim grunted but did not argue. Over the past weeks, he had developed a grudging respect for Faye's work ethic, and even he seemed unwilling to throw her to the wolves. The days passed in tense anticipation. Faye threw herself into her work with renewed intensity, as if physical exhaustion could somehow protect her from the threats circling in the darkness. Owen watched her with worried eyes but did not try to stop her. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, the need to feel useful in the face of fear. A week after they had seen Thomas Brennan in Durango, one of the cattle buyers who regularly worked with the Double T stopped by with news. Thomas Brennan and his gang had been arrested attempting to steal horses from a ranch east of town. There had been a shootout. 2 of Brennan's men were dead. Brennan himself had been shot in the leg and was now sitting in the Durango jail awaiting trial. Faye heard the news and felt her knees go weak. Owen caught her elbow, steadying her, his face grim. "It is over," he said quietly. "He cannot hurt you now," but Faye shook her head. "It is not over. Even if they hang him, it will not be over. I will always be Thomas Brennan's daughter. That will follow me for the rest of my life." "Not if you do not let it," Owen said. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me, Faye. You are not your father. His choices are not your choices. His crimes are not your crimes. You are Faye Brennan, the best ranch hand I have ever worked with, the bravest woman I have ever met, and the person I find myself thinking about every minute of every day." Faye's breath caught. "Owen." "I am in love with you," Owen said, the words tumbling out as if he could no longer hold them back. "I have been falling in love with you since the day I met you at the stockyard, and seeing you afraid, seeing you hurt, it is killing me. So please, please do not let your father take this from you too. Do not let him steal your chance to be happy." Tears spilled down Faye's cheeks. "I am in love with you too," she whispered, "but I am so afraid of what that means." "It means we face whatever comes together," Owen said. He brushed away her tears with his thumbs, his touch achingly gentle. "It means you do not have to be strong alone anymore. It means I am not going anywhere, no matter what your last name is or who your father was." And then he kissed her. It was a soft kiss, tentative, as if Owen was afraid she might pull away. But Faye had spent her entire life running from tenderness, and she was done running. She leaned into him, her hands gripping the front of his shirt, and kissed him back with all the longing and hope and desperate love she had been holding inside. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I want to build a life with you, Faye." I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to raise children with you and grow old with you and make you so happy you forget what it felt like to be afraid." "Yes," Faye said, the word a prayer and a promise. "Yes to all of it." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Wu and the Hands as witnesses and Owen's uncle giving a rare smile of approval. Faye wore a dress of dark blue wool that Owen had bought for her in Durango, and Owen wore his best shirt and a string tie that made him look unfairly handsome. They exchanged vows in front of the fireplace in the main house, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. That night, in the room Owen had prepared for them in the ranch house, Faye finally allowed herself to believe that happiness was not something she had to steal. It was something she could earn with her hands, protect with her courage, and build with the man who had judged her by what she could do rather than where she came from. Thomas Brennan was convicted of horse theft and murder. He was hanged in January of 1884, and Faye did not attend the execution. She was, at that moment, helping a mare through a difficult berth in the Double T barn, her hands steady and sure as she coaxed new life into the world. The foal was a filly, long-legged and perfect, and when she finally stood on wobbly legs and nursed from her exhausted mother, Faye felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was not Thomas Brennan's daughter anymore. She was Faye Tate, wife and rancher, and she had a future as bright and open as the Colorado sky. Owen found her in the barn an hour later, still watching the mare and foal with a soft smile on her face. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "She is beautiful," he murmured. "She is," Faye agreed. "Strong and healthy, she will do well." "Like her owner," Owen said, turning Faye in his arms so he could see her face. "Are you all right? I know today was difficult." Faye considered the question honestly. Was she all right? Her father was dead, executed for his crimes, and she felt relief more than grief. She felt free. "I am more than all right," she said, reaching up to cup Owen's face. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be." The years that followed were not without challenges. Winters were hard in the Colorado mountains, and there were lean times when cattle prices dropped and the ranch struggled. But Faye and Owen faced everything together, their partnership built on trust and respect, and a love that deepened with every passing season. Faye proved herself invaluable to the ranch operations. She had an instinct for cattle that even Owen admitted surpassed his own, and she could read weather and terrain like other people read books. The other ranchers in the area gradually came to respect her, though some never quite got over their discomfort with a woman who could rope and brand as well as any man. Owen's uncle passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years after Faye and Owen married, leaving the Double T entirely to his nephew. Owen grieved, but took comfort in knowing that his uncle had seen him settled and happy before the end. In the spring of 1886, Faye gave birth to their first child, a son they named James Thomas Tate. Owen held the baby with hands that trembled with awe, and Faye watched her husband fall in love all over again. "He has your eyes," Owen said softly, touching the baby's tiny fist. "And your stubborn chin," Faye replied, exhausted but radiant. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years, a daughter named Sarah and another son named Robert. The house that had once seemed too large for 2 people filled with noise and laughter and the controlled chaos of family life. Faye taught her children to ride and rope and read the land. She taught them to judge people by their actions rather than their names, to value honesty over pride, and to never be afraid of hard work. And every night when the children were asleep and the ranch was quiet, she would sit with Owen on the porch and watch the stars come out over the mountains. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked one such night, his arm around her shoulders. Giving up the chance for an easier life. Faye looked at her husband, at the lines the sun and wind had etched into his face, at the gray just beginning to show at his temples, at the hands that were as calloused and scarred as her own. She thought about the life she had built, not through theft or deception, but through honest labor and stubborn determination. She thought about their children, sleeping peacefully in the rooms above, and the ranch that would be their legacy. "This is not the easier life," Faye said, lacing her fingers through Owen's. "But it is the right life. It is my life, the one I chose, the one I earned, and I would not trade a single moment of it." Owen kissed her temple, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. In the distance, a coyote howled and one of the horses in the corral whinnied softly in response. The wind carried the scent of pine and sage and the promise of snow on the high peaks. Faye had wanted a clean start, a chance to be someone other than a cattle rustler's daughter. Owen had given her that chance, but he had given her so much more. He had given her a home, a family, and the understanding that she was worth more than the sins of her father. He had judged her by her hands, not her name, and in doing so, he had helped her see herself clearly for the first time in her life. As autumn turned to winter and the years rolled forward, the Double T continued to thrive. Faye and Owen expanded their operations, buying additional land and building a reputation for quality cattle and fair dealing. Their children grew strong and capable, learning to love the land as their parents did. James, the eldest, developed his father's calm temperament and his mother's way with livestock. By the time he was 15, he could manage a herd as well as any of the hired hands. Sarah inherited Faye's stubborn independence and Owen's sense of justice, and she shocked the neighbors by insisting on learning everything her brothers learned. Robert, the youngest, had a gift for horses that bordered on magical, able to gentle even the most fractious animal with patience and understanding. Faye watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and wonder. They would never know the fear and shame that had shadowed her own childhood. They would never have to run from their family name or hide who they were. She and Owen had broken that cycle, had created something clean and good that would outlast them both. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Faye with a new saddle, custom-made in Denver with her initials tooled into the leather. Faye ran her fingers over the intricate design, her throat tight with emotion. "It is beautiful," she said. "You deserve beautiful things," Owen said, pulling her close. "You deserve all the beautiful things I can give you and more besides." "I have everything I need," Faye said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I have you and the children and this ranch. What more could I possibly want?" "How about a 4th child?" Owen asked, his eyes twinkling. Faye laughed and swatted his shoulder, but 3 months later she discovered she was indeed pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the others, and Faye was confined to bed rest for the final 2 months. She chafed against the inactivity, but Owen was relentless in his care, bringing her meals and books and sitting with her every evening to talk about the day's work. In March of 1897, Faye gave birth to twin girls. The labor was long and difficult, and there was a moment when the doctor looked worried. But Faye had not survived everything she had survived only to be defeated by childbirth. She fought with every ounce of strength she possessed, and when she finally heard the twin cries of her daughters, she wept with relief and joy. They named the twins Emma and Grace, and Owen declared that their family was now complete. The ranch continued to prosper. The cattle industry was changing, with new breeds and new markets opening up as the railroad expanded. Owen and Faye adapted, always looking ahead, always planning for the future. They hired more hands, built new outbuildings, and invested in better stock, but success did not change them. They remained the same people they had always been. Hardworking, honest, devoted to their family and their land. And when the younger ranchers came to Owen for advice, or to Faye with questions about livestock management, they shared their knowledge freely. Remembering how hard it had been to start with nothing, Faye's past occasionally intruded in unexpected ways. Once, a traveling journalist writing a book about notorious outlaws came to the Double T asking questions about Thomas Brennan. Faye met him on the porch, her face impassive, and told him that Thomas Brennan had been her father and that he had paid for his crimes with his life. She had nothing more to say on the subject. The journalist pressed, asking about her childhood, about whether she had participated in any of her father's crimes, about whether she felt any guilt or responsibility. Faye listened until he ran out of questions, then looked him straight in the eye. "My father made his choices and I made mine," she said quietly. "I chose to build something instead of steal it. I chose honest work over easy money. I chose to be judged by what I do rather than what my father did. If you want to write about Thomas Brennan, write about him, but leave me out of it." The journalist left and never published anything about her, perhaps because there was nothing scandalous to report. Faye Tate was exactly what she appeared to be: a successful rancher, a devoted wife and mother, and a woman who had overcome her past through sheer determination and hard work. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Faye and Owen began to slow down. They hired a manager to handle the day-to-day operations of the ranch while they focused on their growing brood of grandchildren. James had married a teacher from Durango and had 3 sons. Sarah had scandalized everyone by going to college in Denver and becoming a veterinarian, though she eventually returned to Colorado and married a fellow veterinarian. Robert managed the horse breeding program and showed no interest in marriage, much to his mother's amusement. The twins, Emma and Grace, were inseparable and ran the ranch's business operations with impressive efficiency. They had inherited their mother's head for numbers and their father's knack for negotiation, and under their management, the Double T became one of the most profitable ranches in southwestern Colorado. On a warm evening in June of 1910, Faye and Owen sat on the porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Owen's hair was white now, and his hands were gnarled with arthritis, but his eyes were still the same creek water gray that had caught Faye's attention all those years ago in the Durango stockyard. "You remember the day we met?" Faye asked, taking his hand. "Every detail," Owen said. "You were standing by the stockyard fence watching me work cattle, and I thought you were the most competent-looking woman I had ever seen." Faye laughed. "Competent-looking? How romantic." "It was romantic," Owen insisted. "You had calloused hands and sun-weathered skin and eyes that said you had seen hard things and survived them. And when I asked to see your hands, when I saw all that evidence of hard work and hard living, I knew you were someone worth knowing." "You gave me a chance when no one else would," Faye said softly. "You saw me, really saw me, not just Thomas Brennan's daughter but Faye, a woman who wanted to be more than her past." "I saw a woman who had already become more than her past," Owen corrected. "You did not need me to save you, Faye. You had already saved yourself. I just had the good sense to recognize that, and the good fortune to convince you to share your life with me." Faye leaned her head on Owen's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady presence that had anchored her for nearly 30 years. "I love you," she said. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "Then I am a fortunate man," Owen said, kissing the top of her head, They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with light. In the yard, their grandchildren's laughter rang out clear and bright. In the barn, the horses settled for the night. In the distance, the cattle grazed peacefully on land that had been tamed and tended with love and sweat and unwavering dedication. Faye had come to Durango with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a desperate need for a clean start. She had found work, but more than that, she had found home. She had found purpose and partnership, and a love that had transformed her from a fugitive's daughter into a woman of substance and worth. Owen had judged her by her hands, not her name, and in doing so had given her the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to become herself. The years continued to pass, gentle and kind. Owen and Faye aged gracefully, their love deepening rather than diminishing with time. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1927, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Owen's health began to fail in the winter of 1928. He had always been strong, but 80 years of hard living finally caught up with him. Faye nursed him with the same dedication she brought to everything else, refusing to let him see her fear, staying strong even as her heart broke watching the man she loved grow weaker. On a cold February morning, Owen woke to find fresh snow blanketing the ranch, turning everything clean and white and new. He called Faye to the window, and they stood together watching the sunrise paint the snow gold and pink. "Beautiful," Owen murmured, his arm around Faye's waist. "Yes," Faye agreed, though she was looking at him rather than the snow. Owen turned to her, reading the expression on her face. "Do not mourn me too much when I am gone," he said gently. "I have lived the most wonderful life, and it is all because of you." "You gave me everything," Faye said, tears streaming down her face. "Everything I am, everything I have, it is because you believed in me." "No," Owen said, cupping her face in his weathered hands. "You gave yourself everything. You chose to be brave. You chose to work hard. You chose to build something beautiful out of the wreckage of your past. I just had the privilege of walking beside you while you did it." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 50 years of love and partnership and unshakable devotion. And when he lay back down and closed his eyes for the final time, Faye held his hand and told him about all the beautiful things they had built together, about the children and grandchildren, and the ranch that would stand as a testament to their love long after they were both gone. Owen Tate died peacefully in his sleep on February 14, 1928, 2 months shy of his 81st birthday. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple headstone that read, "Owen Tate, beloved husband, father, and friend. He judged others by their actions, not their names." Faye lived another 12 years, continuing to oversee the ranch with the help of her children and grandchildren. She never remarried, though several widowers in the area expressed interest. She had loved once, truly and completely, and that was enough for one lifetime. She spent her final years telling stories to her great-grandchildren, passing on the wisdom she had earned through hard experience. She told them about the importance of honest work, about judging people by their character rather than their circumstances, about the power of second chances and the strength it took to forgive yourself for things that were not your fault. And sometimes, when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, she would take out the old wanted poster she had kept all these years, the one bearing her father's face that she had torn down in Durango so long ago. She would look at it and remember the girl she had been, frightened, ashamed, desperate for a chance to become something more. That girl had gotten her chance. She had taken it with both calloused hands and built a life of dignity and purpose and deep, abiding love. She had been judged by her hands, not her name, and in being seen truly for the first time, she had found herself. Faye Tate died in her sleep on a warm summer night in 1940, surrounded by photographs of the family she had helped create and the land she had helped nurture. She was buried beside Owen on the hill overlooking the Double T with a headstone that matched his. Faye Brennan Tate, beloved wife, mother, and friend, she earned everything she had and gave more than she took. The Double T Ranch continued to thrive under the management of Faye and Owen's descendants, who carried forward the values their grandparents had instilled: hard work, integrity, and the understanding that every person deserves to be judged by what they do rather than where they come from. And on warm summer evenings, when the sun set behind the San Juan Mountains and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, the family would gather on the porch of the old house and tell stories about the cattle rustler's daughter who wanted a clean start and the cowboy who judged her by her hands, not her name, and together built something more lasting than either of them could have imagined. Their love story became legend in the valleys and mountains of southwestern Colorado, passed down through generations as proof that the past does not have to define the future, that redemption is possible, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose to start over and believe they deserve happiness. The ranch still stands today, a testament to what two people can build when they see each other clearly, love each other completely, and refuse to let fear or shame or judgment stand in the way of creating something beautiful. The land has been worked by 5 generations of Tates, each one carrying forward the legacy of hard work and honest dealing that Faye and Owen established all those years ago. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the mist rises from the creek and the cattle graze peacefully in the valley, ranch hands swear they can see 2 figures standing on the hill where the old headstones mark the final resting place of Faye and Owen Tate. They stand hand in hand, watching over the land they loved and the family they created, their love as enduring as the mountains themselves and their story a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance, and that the measure of a person lies not in their name but in their actions, not in their past, but in the future they choose to build. Faye Brennan had been a cattle rustler's daughter, burdened by a name that carried shame and judgment. But she became Faye Tate, a woman who earned respect through her own efforts and built a legacy that had nothing to do with her father's crimes and everything to do with her own courage, determination, and capacity for love. She found in Owen Tate a partner who saw her for who she truly was, who judged her by her calloused hands and capable spirit, rather than by the sins of her father. And together, they proved that love and hard work and unwavering faith in each other could overcome any obstacle and create something truly extraordinary. Their story ended not with tragedy or regret, but with peace, satisfaction, and the knowledge that they had lived fully, loved completely, and left the world better than they found it. And in the end, that was the greatest triumph of all, not just surviving the past but transcending it, not just finding redemption but creating it, and not just seeking a clean start but building an entire life worthy of the second chance they had been given. The sun set on the Double T Ranch, casting long shadows across the valley where cattle grazed and horses ran free, where children played and families gathered, where the legacy of Faye and Owen Tate lived on in every fence post, every blade of grass, and every generation that called this land home. And as the stars came out one by one, filling the Colorado sky with brilliant light, their story continued to inspire those who heard it to believe in the power of second chances, the importance of judging others fairly, and the enduring truth that love, real and true, can heal even the deepest wounds and transform the most difficult past into a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibility.